welcome to UK Thrashers episode 12. Tonight we've got an interview with Coke Finlay from Virus, but before that, here's some Incinerary and Deceiver.
From the dance
with Deceiver, taken from their 2014 Dead, Bound and Buried. Those guys have been in the studio and we're expecting a new album from them soon. Okay, next up is our interview with Virus frontman Coke Finlay. Okay, in this week's episode, we're really excited to welcome Coke Finlay from original UK thrash bad lads Virus into the virtual studio. Hello, mate. Thanks for joining us. We seem to have been talking behind closed doors and on Messenger for, well, it feels like months about the new album, and it's finally coming out on Friday. What's been going on?
Well, thanks for having us, first of all, Neil. What can I say? It's been a marathon. The guys at Combat, I kind of twisted their arm and kept on saying to them, when's the album going to be released? We need to get this sorted out as quickly as possible. And although it's not going to be like any sort of physical copies at the moment, and I don't understand why they're dragging their heels, because I mean there's a lot of albums that have come out now and they've got physical copies that are on the shelves, so to speak, theoretically. But I just think have dragged their heels a little bit, and I know they've had problems, and I know they've had the CEO's had health issues, which serious health issues. That's Tom Hazard. He's had really a lot of health problems, and so it's been a while. It's taken its time, and they've had a lot of other things going on. EMP have been releasing, which is connected to Combat, have been releasing Dave Elvison's solo project. So our album's sort of taken a back seat from that, which is understandable, because I mean they're probably the biggest thing on that label.
I kind of know, because we've been chatting a little bit over the last few months, but you kind of poured your heart and soul into Evilution Apocalypse. I think both physically and mentally, it's kind of at times it's really taken its toll on you. But tell us about the album, because I think you've got something to be proud of really there at the end.
Yeah, I kind of like I wanted to go back to grassroots, and I was, to be quite honest, I've been sick of hearing like the old school bands who are trying to be something that they're not, and I don't mean that in any disrespect. I just think that some of the old school bands are trying too hard to fit into the category of the new school, and I to me, I don't want to do that. I don't want to steal the thunder from under, bands of the new era, which do a great fucking job, and they're not old school thrash, and I wanted to keep it 100% old school thrash. So I dug right into my roots, and I was listening to the old stuff like Violence, listening to Old Testament. I was listening to old Exodus, who are my favourite thrash band. Next to Suicidal Tendencies, who I've played with a few times. But yeah, fuck yeah, I wanted to get back to the grassroots and just wanted to be and a lot of people will say, well, you haven't really gone out of your comfort zone. But why should you go out of your comfort zone? Slayer never went out of their comfort zone, so why should we go out of our comfort zone? I mean, why fix something that doesn't need fixed?
Was it hard work though? Was it a struggle to come back after all this time and pull all this together? I think you took a lot of the weight of this on your shoulders, didn't you? It was kind of did you have to drag people along kicking and screaming at times?
Well, the thing was, I had the project in my head for quite a long time, and I don't actually record anything. It's all in my head. That is totally old school. I don't have any sort of equipment around, like a home studio or anything like that. It was all done in the studio, and it was hours and hours and hours of going back and spending we were sometimes 12, 13 hours in the studio, so it took its toll on me. The guitar work was okay, I could handle the guitar work. There wasn't too many too many takes on that. It was the singing it was the vocals, and I'm not the greatest of vocalists. I'll admit that right now. I'm really not one of the greatest vocalists, but and I was suffering from a bit of a chest infection at the time as well. So I tried my best. You know, it's probably not what everybody wants to hear, but you know, I did. I tried my hardest through adversity as well, and my mental health was really getting affected with it as well, because there was some things I wasn't happy with. I was going back to, and you know, it's just the same old rigmarole in the studio. Everybody just wants to do their best, and it was great to see my guys like really enjoying what they were doing. But for me, it was exciting, but it was excruciatingly fucking painful at times.
So you just mentioned your guys then. Who's the lineup? I think you've got a slightly different lineup on the album than you have now as your touring lineup. But who the guys in the band with you?
Well, I've just actually hired a new bassist, an absolutely incredible, multi-talented guy called Will Shields. He's a phenomenal musician, really is incredible. He plays drums, he plays bass, he plays keyboards. He does everything. He produces everything himself. You know, he's got his own home recording studio and everything. The guy's a wonder, and he's you know, he's based in the old school thrash. He's not necessarily a youngster. You know, this guy's in his late 20s. He's the bass player. I've got an incredible young drummer called Liam Hasty, who, for me, is probably one of the best drummers that I have ever found. And I've been through a lot of drummers, but he is one of the best, because I mean, the guy just learned practically all our songs in a week. Wow. It was unfucking believable. I mean, I was like this guy, and it was just such a this was a freak happening. Finding this guy, he was in the studio, he was drumming around. We were looking for another drummer because Mike Devlin had left the band, the guy who recorded the drums on Evolution. To be quite honest, Mike really wasn't into it, even though he did a couple of tours with us. You know, he really wasn't into the thrash scene, and I can't take it away from him. You know, like he's not in the thrash, but he's a phenomenal drummer. I think it was just a little bit too light on the cymbals on the album, which the producer who mixed it actually tried to put the levels up on the cymbals, and he was that tippy-tappy on the cymbals that it doesn't really sort of shine through. So that's one of the qualities that I miss on that. Whereas the new guy we've got, Will, he's Liam. Liam's young, versatile pounder, but he's got technical ability as well, which is really great. And Rob Sanchez, who is the guitarist who played on the album. Yes, this old bastard who I quote is trying to find his youth again, as quoted by somebody from Metal Temple, the interview, trying to retain his youth.
Where is it? In the sock drawer or something? You just got to have a search around. It can't be far away.
Yeah, it's probably in my wank drawer.
So that's the lineup you'll take on the road with you, is it? That's the kind of hopefully stable lineup for the time being, at least.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty stable, because I've got those guys are pretty dedicated, and I say that every time I get fucking guys in the band, but these guys, it just seems to be, it's a little bit more integrity, and I don't rule them with a fucking iron rod. I mean, these guys do what they want, and they've all got things they're doing outside, you know. So these guys, I don't know. We had a practice last night. It was like our second practice altogether, and it's just absolutely amazing how it sounds really tight. And with Will, who hasn't played with us, you know, it's fucking incredible. I mean, it's a freak. It really is a freak.
So it was part of the trouble, obviously, where you're based, because you've relocated back to Dundee now, haven't you? You're kind of back at, I guess, which is the original home stomping ground. Does that make it a bit more of a challenge, because you're a little bit more out of the way than the kind of the bigger kind of Glasgow and Edinburgh scenes?
No, I don't really give a fuck about that, really. You know, you can be anywhere in the world in the tiniest places. I mean, look at Angeles Apodrida, who are like in Spain. They don't live in a big city. I mean, you know, but they're still playing fucking stadiums and shit like that, you know. And you know, it doesn't matter where you are. It's if you can get access to the locations where people want you to play.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to fucking say no. If somebody wants me to play certain festivals that will remain nameless, then I will take that opportunity.
So back to the new album. I think you've got a mix of producers on it, haven't you? You know, obviously the title track, which Tom himself did some vocals on for you as well. That was, that was mixed by Randy Burns.
That's the very fella.
That's the one. That's right. Make sure I had Scott Burns and Randy Burns in, and they're very different. Very different. So that was mixed by Randy Burns. What about the rest of the album? Is it how many songs are done by Randy, and who did the rest?
Well, that's the only one that's done by Randy.
Okay.
Because to be quite honest, we couldn't afford Randy. Randy just did it as a favour to Tom, because Tom and Randy are pretty big mates, and Randy owed him a few favours. So Tom said. And I understand it because, Tom's on the vocals on the album, so he obviously wanted to have a good production, and so and Randy was only too happy to do it, but Randy is a meticulous, absolute obsessed producer who has to get everything absolutely perfect, so it took a little while for Randy to do the production, so he kept on going back to it. And he said, I said to him, I said, I know you're really sort of, he's one of these guys he's a perfectionist. So I said to him, when are we going to get this fucking single from you? Because my God, I says, you're taking weeks, mate. And he's like, says, I just want to make sure everything's okay. It's like my first thrash thing I've done since the 90s. And I'm like, well, that's quite an accolade, really, for like to do it to Little Old Virus, to produce Virus's first single in many years, and I was really, really, really pleased. So cheers, Randy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, thanks for Tom for twisting some arms and probably buying him a few beers to get him on board. So who did the rest of it?
Well, the rest of it was done by Richard Easterling, who is he's produced, among others, American Head Charge and some big names like that. So he's not a small producer. He's actually produced all the Dave Elviston album, their last album, Sleeping Giants. So he's got quite a big repertoire as well, and he's got a lot of bands that he has done. I can't really name them all, but he's quite a big producer in the US. And he was another one who took his time. That's why the album was probably late in getting out as well, because the guy just really took his time, and he had a lot of projects on the go at the same time, bigger bands than us. I was just screwing to your balls. I said, "Is it ready, mate?" And then there was a lot of confusion about me with me and Tom, because we didn't get it out. Tom was confused that this was just like a rough mix, but it actually wasn't the rough mix. It was actually the final mix, and we had to go back to Richard to clear up a few things. There was the vocals were a little bit low. We had to bring the vocals up a little bit as well. And he did like a lot of guitar in it. There is a lot of guitar on the album because in essence Richard is a guitarist himself, so he's probably more interested in the guitar than anything else. That's why it sounds like a very big guitar sound. It's good.
I'm looking forward to it, because obviously I heard some advanced mixes from you, so I'll be interested to hear what the final thing sounds like and how it compares. Because I heard Evolution before it had been remixed by Randy, and he just added such a thickness and richness to the sound that although it sounded really good before, he just gave it that depth and breadth, which was
he gave it that old school vibe. That's Randy's forte, is the old school vibe. He's like he's still got that 90s feel about him, because like he really, really brings it that authentic feel. And that's what I liked about Randy's, the way he did things, the way it sounded. There was little nuances that he put on it that just brought it that level higher, You know what I mean? It just seemed like, Richards was great, and then Richards like in the middle of the recording sphere, let's say, and then Randy's right at the top, and to get somebody with that much prestige to do your first single, I mean, that's an honour.
So going backwards a little bit, you guys as a band, I think it's probably fair to say you're kind of always the bridesmaid, but never the bride in the UK. You've had some brilliant support slots. You mentioned Suicidal. There's loads of bands that you supported, but kind of bands like you, Hydra Vein. We mentioned Psy before we came on air. That in Annihilated, you guys were always you guys were always the underground and never quite made it that additional step, or at least got to the bigger kind of the bigger footholding into the UK. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think we were probably friend of the groom. Not even the bridesmaid. We were fucking friend of the groom, because we I don't know, we got overshadowed because of our reputation back then, because I think the journalists didn't like us, and if journalists don't like you back then, you kind of go in the back foot, and a lot of the guys back then were getting a lot of publicity. The UK scene was never as big as the American or the European scene, but the guys that were at the top were obviously us, Onslaught, Acid Rain, Death Wish. Were quite up there as well. Lawnmower Death, Annihilated were kind of there, but I really felt for Annihilated. I don't know about the rest of the guys in Virus, but I felt for Annihilated because they were on the same label as us, and they were getting absolutely fucking shafted by Works. They were absolutely getting shafted and just dropped down the fucking ladder, which was like, it was horrendous for them, because Metalworks just weren't taking notice of them, and they were fucking extraordinarily good. Albums back then, they didn't get the production that they deserved, obviously because of finances. Even us, I don't even think the Metalworks put a lot of money into our production either. It was just a fucking scam, really. I don't know if you remember a thrash band called Deliverance from back in the day. That, and I'm going to come totally fucking clean about this, and it should have been said many, many fucking years ago. That was a scam. Deliverance was not even a band. It was our manager and our producer and our record company all working together, and they brought that out just to make fucking money. And they did that in our producer's recording studio. So Deliverance were never a band, never did any gigs. There it is right there. And there's Deliverance in America, I know, but the UK Deliverance was never actually banned. So there's some facts about old school thrash for you.
So that was because there was quite a lot of hype around them, wasn't there? It was built up to be a kind of
massive.
Yeah. So it is your kind of the late 80s version of the Simon Cowell, manufactured band, really. That it was just done well, or even worse than that, I guess. It
was literally worse than that, because the album cover was very controversial, because it was like a little girl, like in like a white sort of dress, with blood coming out of her mouth, and that was actually the producer's daughter. So like he'd got his daughter involved in it as well, and like in this fucking sham. And don't get me wrong. They're good musicians. They could actually fucking play. But I think I'm not sure about this, but I think they brought a couple of session guys in. Don't quote me on that, but that they never did a gig. They would never do a gig anyway, because they weren't capable of doing gigs.
It was purely produced in the studio to make some funds.
Exactly. It was just to make Metalworks more money.
Yeah, scary. And back then there was a lot of, maybe not quite as bad as that, but you hear lots of stories about, every label wanted a thrash band on there. Everyone grabbed young UK bands or, you know, bands that, and just treat them like shit. You know, everyone you hear, you know, you read Ian Glasper's history of UK thrash book, and all you see is that same old story of, you know, we got on a major label took us, they fucked us over, they took all our money, they charged us to go on tour, and then, you know, and fucked us off at the other end again. And it seems to be a bit of a recurring theme. Yeah,
everybody got shafted. Everybody got shafted because all those companies were interested in was making money. They weren't interested in the fucking music. None of them were interested in the music. They were just money-grabbing bastards. They just wanted to make money because they thought they had a product that would make them their millions.
Do you think that went further than labels as well? No. Do you think that went into the magazine companies and shit like that?
I think it went into I think it went into the magazine companies. I think it went into the promoters. It went into the big promoters in the UK. And I'm not going to mention any names because then I'll get sued for libel. But there was major promoters in the UK who were just sucking the bands dry, and I mean totally sucking the bands dry, because they were putting them on high profile gigs, but the bands weren't making any money out of it.
No, and
it seems to be that it's the same sort of thing that's happening today, really, as well. Like I've experienced it from Evil, because like I spoke to Matt from Evil, and he was saying, yeah, they did a gig with us in Suicidal Tendencies in the Electric Ballroom many years ago, and I asked them, like, you guys must be, you know, raking it in. No, we're self-funding fucking everything here, and I thought, because like they were above us on the bill, they were getting more money than us. No, they were getting the same fucking money as we were getting. That was fucking incredible. Obviously, Suicidal Tendencies were getting fucking thousands, but us and Evil were getting shafted.
And that's you know, and if bands at your level with your experience and those guys are getting that, you know, you can imagine the sort of advantage that they're playing on these young bands who are, you know, who are desperate to pay. You know, this is where the whole pay to play thing comes in, and these guys aren't even getting travelling money to come and set up a gig. You know, it's, you know, and I think at 18 you're quite happy just to be on the bill and it's all exciting, but there comes a point that you need to make a fucking living out of this shit.
Well, the thing is, but these days you can't make a living out of it. That's plain and simple. You really can't make a living out of it unless you're one of the big four. You really cannot make a living out of it. The thing is, you have to have passion. You have to have fucking passion for this, because if you don't have passion for it, you wouldn't be fucking doing this. You really wouldn't be doing this, because the expenditure is incredible, especially if you want to go on tour in Europe and you want to self-fund it in Europe. The expenditure is fucking phenomenal. Okay, maybe they pay your plane fare over and stuff like that, but that's as far as it goes. You know, you've got to sort out a hire company for fucking for buses. You've got to hire your backline for out there as well, unless you take the whole fucking shebang with you, and you go across on a ferry. I actually drove from where was it? I drove from where was it? Dover. I drove from Dover. Obviously, I got the ferry across, but I drove from Dieppe to Cluj-Napoca in Romania in 24 hours for our first gig on the tour in 2014, because nobody in my fucking band drove. Those pricks were all getting fucking drunk in the back, causing me no end of fucking hassle. I don't know how I fucking did it. I was fucking running on empty. By the time I drove into Hungary, I was like fucking asleep at the wheel. I was like fucking Suicidal Tendencies, asleep at the fucking wheel, mate.
Fucking hell. And that's not really putting you in the best place to start a gig, is it? You know, where's Coke having a fucking sleep out the back? Yeah.
No, I was. The adrenaline was so much. By the time we got to Bucharest, by the time we actually got to Bucharest for the first gig, I was like, I was fucking shattered. I was like, I said, we actually got to Cluj-Napoca first of all, because I couldn't actually do the gig. And I phoned up the promoter, and she was absolutely fucking livid, because like there was a lot of people there at the gig, and I had to turn it down because I was physically and mentally fucking exhausted. I mean, I fell out with the band and was just going to fucking leave the van where it was and just fuck off on a plane and get home, because that's what I wanted to do, because I just felt I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't physically drive. I couldn't drive. But the thing was, I was 40 miles from the fucking gig, and I could not drive another. I couldn't drive another fucking inch in that fucking van.
Fucking hell. So I hope the new guys have all got driving licenses then.
One of them has.
That's it. I don't care how shit a drummer or how shit a bassist you are. I want to see your driving license first. That's the problem. You need to change the audition process.
Yeah, that's the audition process. Have you got a car?
That's it.
Good. You're in.
Yeah, that's it. You've suddenly got to the higher point on the list.
I don't give a fuck if you play.
Yeah, so fucking, you barely keep time. I don't give a shit. Just make sure you can fucking take over the wheel when
I've got him. Jurassic Park.
Brilliant. Right, back in the day, you guys had a bit of a reputation. You know, Virus turned into quite often turned into a fist fight. At least there was an outward perception of this. I don't think it happened every gig, but there was a general perception that if there was shit was going to go down, you guys were going to be in the middle of it, stirring a bit of shit and kind of wielding some punches. Do you think that did you any harm in the lot? And do you think any of it's carried over? Do you think people still consider you guys with that kind of a little bit of that thug kind of history attached to it?
I think it hurt us a lot. I think it really hurt us a lot, because the people's conceptions of us back then was that we were just a bunch of thugs who couldn't play, who basically just were there for making trouble, and which was a total misconception, because we were there to play music. We had roadies that were a bit heavy-handed. I mean, they were really heavy-handed. I think it's because of the naivety of the guys at the time, and they were there basically to be the security and the roadies to protect us, really. And I think a couple of times they went a wee bit too far, and it ended up in actually the fans trying to get to us because they thought it was our fault. And then we'd have to like physically defend ourselves. But it wasn't all like that. But we gained that reputation, and I think it hurt the spirit of the band, and it kind of hurt it very very much hurt the reputation, and it got around that we were just a bunch of drunken fighting idiots. But it wasn't always the case. I mean, we had some really good gigs with some really dedicated fans that wanted to come and see us time after time. We had people that follow us on tour. You know, it was extraordinary. It was just an extraordinary time, because you're one of the forefronts of the thrash metal scene, and I mean, we took it for granted that we were up there. We weren't the most talented. We weren't the most technical. We weren't. We weren't the most friendly, I would say, either, you know. But it dented our reputation. But you know, I don't know what happened, because back then I think it was like we were very, 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 very passionate about our music, and if somebody said something, you know, that wasn't quite to our taste, you know, about the band, then we'd turn on them and get quite aggressive. I remember we were playing with Acid Rain in the pits in Milton Keynes, and there was and when we were playing, there was a couple of guys doing the duck walk at the front of the stage, and we took quite an offence to that, because there was about 5 or 6 of them that were just sort of doing the quack quack duck walk, and the Birdies song thing at the front of the stage while we were playing music, you know, our music. And I think they were there. They were actually there to put us off, and they were there because they weren't Virus fans. They were obviously Acid Rain fans, and they were just there to see Acid Rain as they were wearing Acid Rain t-shirts, and so there was a little bit of a conflict there, and that didn't end too well. But what I want to say now is that's a stigma that I've tried to lose for so many fucking years, and it's really depressed me that that if people still see us like that. I hope they don't, because I think we're a different animal now. We're a totally different group. I'm the head of the band now. It's not that fucking arsehole Heston who clearly portrayed that persona, that he was a big fucking hard man, which he was an absolute shite bag if you'd really got to know him. And same with some of the other guys in the band as well. You know, they came across as one with a big fucking hard man. They were absolutely the biggest shite bags in the band. I wanted to fight both of them in two different consecutive occasions, because I just couldn't fucking stand them, really, because they were so egotistical. And they all about them. I'd never even got a chance to do a fucking interview and say what I wanted to say, because they held me back and saying, well, you know, what have you got to say about the band? What can you say? Well, I wrote the fucking music, and there wouldn't be any fucking Post Recon or fucking Lunacy if I hadn't joined the band.
No,
because that was me. I fucking wrote those two fucking albums, and I'm not being pretentious and I'm not being big-headed about it. They would have still been a discharged cover band if I hadn't joined the band, because they just didn't have the talent to go forward. They really didn't. And I pushed them. I put to come up with stuff. And even if you listen on Post Recon, there's a lot of mistakes drum-wise. A lot of mistakes. A lot of timing issues. Even on Lunacy, there is a lot of timing issues. So I tried to lose that stigma. I tried for 30 years to lose that stigma. If people still think it's like that, then that's up to them. But we're definitely not like that. I'm a different person. I'm a totally, totally different person to back then. And I really don't want to be. I don't even like being called the bad boys of thrash metal, because it's like it sounds good. It sounds exciting. It sounds like but it's not. It's not exciting. It's damaging. It's very fucking damaging.
You know, no one wants to think about going to see a band who used to beat up their fans, or, you know, all that sort of stuff. And it does how, you know, it's still, you know, I mean, that's the negative
beat
connotation.
Up the fans. Beat up the fans is an exaggeration. We were more like defending ourselves.
The truth never gets in the way of a good story, does it?
Well, yeah, there's arms and legs added to everything. Every story that you get, there's arms and legs added to it. So I can't say for the rest of the band, because I don't like the rest of the band.
Yeah, I know.
The original members.
Yeah, who are now, you know, well, in fact, we'll come back onto that in a minute, because they're still kind of faffing around in places. But
yeah, let's come on to that.
Okay.
Let's dig that hole.
Let's dig that tunnel in a minute. Yeah. So on that kind of bringing it right back forward again, what do you think to the young bands at the moment? I know you've gathered some of the youngsters. You've got Blacklist supporting you, Bangover, Band Medicine, all kind of penciled in for your launch shows. Are you still kind of quite plugged into what's going on in the UK scene and in the kind of the new up and coming bands?
Yeah, I'm kind of plugged into it. I don't necessarily agree with all of it, and I'll be honest. I don't agree with all of it. There's a lot of bands that I just think that are trying too hard, that are trying to be something they're not. There's a lot of bands that have got an old school feel to them. I know that Desolator, they're an old school type thrash band. I've said a few things about them, you know, but they've got an old school vibe to them, and you know they are pretty good. There is a couple of there's a couple of good bands. Blacklist are a great band. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're completely thrash, more like a black thrash type of thing. Bangover are just a bunch of guys that are just like the old school. They've got the old school mentality, And Bad Medicine, I've not really heard much about. You know, and Shrapnel are a great band. Shrapnel have been around for a little while now. You know, they did an EP called Decade of Decimation, which is absolutely fantastic. But they brought out this new album, Palace of the Insane, I think it's called.
Yeah, Palace of the Insane.
I really cannot get into it. I really cannot get into it. There's no disrespect to the guys or anything like that. You know, I like their earlier stuff. The music's very technical. The very new school style. I just think, you know, again, what I was talking about, trying too hard. You know, there's a lot of repetition in that album. You know, there's riffs that shouldn't really be there. You know, it's not their best. Let me say that. It's the same with Zentrix. Zentrix, they tried to be like a new school band, and that last album is pretty disappointing. Then there's other bands. There's a great band up in Scotland called Thrashist Regime. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, they've done an amazing album. You know, it's not getting the recognition it should, and it is a fantastic album. The musicianship is of the highest caliber. There's not a couple of bands. There's Incinerary down in, I think they're from Manchester or Liverpool or somewhere. I absolutely loved Blood Vera and Pitiful Rain. What happened to those bands? I mean, they were absolutely fantastic. There's bands that have come and gone. Was it Mutant? Mutant were excellent. Mutant were one of the, you know, one of my shouts to be the biggest thing in the UK, and they just fizzled out. Yeah. They just went. There's not a couple of bands I could mention. Gamma Bomb, you know, great bunch of guys. I've played with them a couple of times. They are excellent guys. You know, their music, I wouldn't really call it thrash. I would call it like more speed metal. You know, I wouldn't really say it's like they have like chops and changes, but they bring it down much. It's all about the speed. It's all about the high caliber, the high octane thrash that they play. Speed thrash metal. I hate putting these labels on it these days because it's just it's if it's thrash, it's thrash, and it's like I'll say it like a spade's a spade. If it's thrash, it's thrash. If it's not thrash, I don't see it as thrash.
And it's definitely got harder. You know, there's the blackened thrash, the death thrash, the doom thrash. It all kind of, there's more hardcore influences, and it does get harder and harder to see where the genre kind of starts and stops at a minute. But I guess it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because if people don't do all this sort of stuff, then everyone else complains that it's always the same, and we just keep repeating ourselves. And you understand why these guys try and push the boundaries a little bit.
But you wouldn't say that about Slayer. I mean, you wouldn't say that about Slayer. You wouldn't say, it's all the same all the time, because it is. But the difference between Slayer is like they were like the renaissance of a genre, let's say. You know, so anything that comes out nowadays is going to be a carbon copy of one of the big four or one of the big five in Germany, you know, or even one of the big four in the UK.
Yeah.
If there is such a thing as the big four, but you know, and we're. You know, like, we weren't sort of classed as one of the big four. I was talking probably Sabbath, Acid Rain, Lawnmower Death, and Onslaught. They were the ones that were up there.
Yeah.
So, but the new genre of thrash in the UK, I think it's very, very diluted. Unless they come up with something really, really original, then it's really not going to appeal to me. If you see what I mean, because it's the crossover thing's good, and it's good for the younger generation to slip into this, to be influenced by the death metal, to be influenced by the black metal, or even just the heavy metal, which Reign of Fury have kind of done.
Yeah, they've
crossed like heavy metal with thrash metal. So and they're a fabulous band. They're really good, but you know. I'm not a huge fan of the new style. I don't take it away from the musicianship is incredible these days, but I'm just really not a fan of it. It's just my opinion.
I guess the difference is, you know, you're even fucking older than I am. So you've lived through this from the start and and moved your way forward. Whereas, when I interviewed a band the other day, their drummer's like 14. I've got fucking t-shirts older than that. It's like these guys are, but
they've got fucking skid marks older than that.
These guys are doing it retrospectively. They their starting point was, Metallica Black Album or, and they've then gone backwards, and they're, some of the stuff that we take for granted, they've never heard of. There's bands that they go, fucking these are, the stuff I push out and, play old tracks. And, you mentioned Death Wish. People are like, I've never fucking heard of these. So it's like, because they've been and gone before you even, before you're even a fucking idea of twinkling your father's eye, lad. So I think it's a very different approach, isn't it? If you were 16 now and getting into thrash now, your spectrum, and obviously with modern technology and having Spotify on demand and all that sort of shit, I think you approach music in a very different way to what you did kind of growing out the punk scene and that DIY scene and then growing with the scene. I think it maybe these guys have just got a very different direction they're coming from.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a downfall as well, coming from the punk scene, because I think with the initial album that we did, which I take no credit for whatsoever, Pray for War, which was just really sort of a carbon copy of what Discharge were doing. I think they were trying to be the next Discharge, which I love Discharge. I mean, my mates are Discharge. I've known these guys for 30 years, so, and like, they're not just my friends. They're my idols as well, because like I'm a massive Discharge fan, and every gig I go to Discharge, I never really need to pay, because like, and GBH as well, because I know these guys. I squatted with GBH in London, so went back in the 80s. So these are guys I hung about with, and they were also my idols. So it kind of makes you feel part of their family. Same with the Courtney Rejects as well. I worked for the Courtney Rejects, and that was part of my life. So I love these people. These people are a part of my life, and as is the old thrash masters from the UK. All the old bands from the UK were like, we were a family. We weren't really trying to outdo anybody. It seems to be today, like, a lot of the bands are trying to outdo each other and see who wants to come out with the best thrash that they can. And there's always one band that wants to go one step further. They don't really want to be much of a family. There's no of a thrash family these days, which is a shame.
And why do you reckon that is? Is that a cultural thing nowadays? Is this, is it just kind of, is it just a generation thing that, that feeling of belonging isn't there anymore?
Well, this is just my opinion, but it's just, I just think that, I don't see it. I don't see it myself, because I don't get a chance to play with a lot of the new bands. Obviously, not recently. But and I don't really keep in touch with a lot of the new scene. But there was so much camaraderie back in the day. It was like, if you didn't see a band that you played with for a couple of months, it was like, it's great to see you again. It's like, maybe it is the same today. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of competition, because there's a lot more thrash bands in the UK than there used to be. So there is that amount of competition these days, and also there is a lot more talent. It's got to be said. There's a lot more talent.
As in musicianship side of life.
As in musicianship, as in bands, and the way the bands run themselves these days, rather than they have like management, promoters, PR, record companies. They're doing it DIY, a lot of them. So it's a lot fucking harder. So they're pushing themselves more than we did, because we just sat back and let the managers and the record company do what they do best.
Yeah.
But they have to fucking work hard. And even Virus today, we have to work hard. Now, because we're practically forgotten. So hopefully this album will
remind, and
put
I guess
us back on the map.
That means kind of learning a few new tricks as well. I guess most of the young bands are kind of plugged into social media. They're plugged into YouTube and all those sorts of things. I know you've got Chris doing a lot of that sort of stuff for you, and you've kind of taken on some of it yourself. So
Chris Heap, Chris Heap took a bit of the weight off for me. Like Chris is a gem of a man. We've spoken many times on the phone. I've never actually met Chris. We've also got like a PR company, Bespoke Media, who are doing a lot of stuff for us. That's Martin Dunn. Big shout out to Martin Dunning, and for all his help. I can't thank him enough for putting us on his roster. I mean, he's got quite a big name on his roster. Static X. So
okay.
we're in good company there. But Chris is new to the game, but I've never met a more enthusiastic guy than Chris Heap. I mean, he's just he wants to do so much for Virus and for the metal scene in general in the UK. Because, I mean, the guy just pushes so many bands. And now that he's branched into the American scene, it's a step up for Mr. Heap.
Yeah.
So, and that's good for us. It's good for the bands that he's managing. It's good for, Heaps of Metal, which he runs. And now he's got Heaps of Metal America.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
He fills my inbox on a daily basis. It's, Chris. When he's had a busy night, because you log into Facebook in the morning and see all the, posted in. Like, fucking hell, Chris has been busy. What about the Scottish scene itself? You touched on a couple of the Scottish bands. How do you? I think you were talking about the scene itself, and I know the guys from the CST all seem really strong, and they all kind of seem to be rallying around each other. Do you kind of see? Do you see much of the rest of what's going on in Scotland?
No. Basically, I've got a little crux to bear here. I think the CST have shunned Virus, to be quite honest. I fell out with one of the guys who run. Maybe the guy who runs the CST. I don't know, but I said a comment, and once you say one comment about one band, it goes around the CST, and they probably like Virus, but they just don't like me. They probably think I'm an arsehole. But I could take that on the chin. I've taken many fucking hits on the chin, and I'll take another one. But there's a few bands that have upset me, let's say, the CST. And I'm not going to mention any names. The CST can think what they fucking like about me. I don't really care for it. I'm not a part of it. I'm part of a bigger thing. I'm part of a bigger scene. I'm part of the thrash metal scene. If anybody in the CST has a beef with me, that's fine. I'm a big boy who can take care of myself. I don't need somebody to tell me how good or how bad my album or my band is. Come and see us. Find out for yourself. So I mean, and I'm not destroying any egos of anybody in the CST or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, like, there's some talent in the CST. They're great fucking bands, but they really need to fucking grow up and stop fucking trolling on social media and trolling me on social media, because it just doesn't work. Because I couldn't give a fuck about the CST. Because they don't give a fuck about me, so I've got nothing to do with it.
No.
Like I said, I'm part of a bigger thing.
Right. Talking about people you might have a little bit of beef with, kind of at one point, yeah. I'm not sure if it's still the case. There was two versions of Virus that looked like they were going to be releasing material. Hester and the guys kind of seemed to regroup in the States and were using the name again and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does it sit? As far as I'm concerned, you're Virus, you own the name, you own all the material. Is that American side of things still kicking around, or have you kind of just tried to distance yourself from that shit and get on with doing what you need to do?
Well, let me clear this up, right? There was a rumour going round that the original Virus, 3 members of Virus, were going to reform again. What happened was they accused me of re-releasing Force Recon on Combat without their permission. Now, I couldn't do that. I had to go through Combat to do that. How the fuck could I do that? And Combat themselves, as a business, wouldn't allow that because they would have to get in touch with the rest of the band for their approval. I can't give my approval because I'm not the sole member that recorded everything on that fucking album. So Combat went to them. I don't know. I assume they went to Henry Heston, who's stirred that up so that I lose credibility for that. And what he did was he realised how much, I suppose, recognition that Virus were getting again, because we were touring with big bands, we were doing big gigs, did Hammerfest twice, supporting big bands, and we were quite high on the bill on Hammerfest. The second time we were like main support to the second stage, which I think it was 10 Foot Wizard that were headlining on the second stage, and we were main support, which is a fucking, it's an honour. It was an honour to be up that high on the bill. And they saw it in themselves, well, there's money to be made here. So if we put the Virus thing out again, obviously, because I think they were jealous. There's a big jealous streak in Henry Heston, because it was originally his band, but he did give me permission to carry on Virus where he couldn't. And what they did was they went over to America for a nice little fucking holiday to Los Angeles. I assume is one rehearsal. Okay. And they said, "Oh, we're back in the studio rehearsing. It's just like we weren't away." What the fuck are you rehearsing? You can't rehearse fucking Force Recon because you can't fucking play it. There's no way he could play. He's been 30 years out of the business. 30 years since he's played thrash. I've been playing thrash all the time, so I can play this shit with my eyes closed. It's all talk and no walk. He just wanted to shit on my parade, and that's all he's ever done, really. And he's just a bad-minded person with a bad attitude, because I brought out an album that he could never do in his lifetime.
Plans going forward? Obviously, the tour, because of this COVID shit, has been messed around with, and you kind of starting to get the new dates cemented in, I guess, depending on what goes on. Everything's
up in the air, really. We don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, Aberdeen are back down in lockdown because of fucking idiots cramming out pubs in Aberdeen. So, and there's a rumour that Tayside might go down in lockdown as well. So I don't know. We had a couple of dates planned for September, but I don't know whether that's going on. I don't know what the situation is in England. I don't really watch the news because it's all bullshit to me. I'm not interested in what happens on the BBC, for example. And I rarely keep up with what's on the news. I'll watch YouTube to find out that the next big step in the COVID saga. But to me, it's all a lot of bullshit. The government is trying to spout out to you. It's always been they've mismanaged this very, very badly, and because it's not money that's coming into the government. They're all against fucking venues playing gigs because it doesn't give any revenue to the government whatsoever. It just goes in, just lines the pockets of promoters. So they're not interested in putting gigs on. That's the last thing on their mind, putting gigs on. I think it was a big mistake opening the pubs as well. Because it's just an excuse for arseholes to congregate in one area and pass this fucking this in quotes virus around. No, I'm sceptical about the September dates, because I think we're looking at next year, and it's not looking good for this year at all.
So obviously, with that aside, what is the plan? Tour the new album, play some festivals.
Yeah, well, Yeah, I want to tour with the album. We're speaking. Well, I'm speaking to Combat about getting us across to the States. When that'll happen, I don't know, but we're optimistic about it. Next year, we can get across to the States and tour the album. That's the main goal. Festivals, yes. I mean, I've asked Bloodstock for the last 10 years to put us on, and they've turned us down every time. Hopefully next year we can get Bloodstock. Nothing's concrete on that end, but I would love to play Bloodstock. If Bloodstock want us, then we'll definitely do it. But I was told we have to have a product, so we've got a product. I think it's only rightful that our place should be at Bloodstock, should be sealed at Bloodstock, because they put on practically all the big UK thrash names, but except us. I think I had a little bit of beef with Bloodstock about it, but it's water under the bridge now, and I swore I'd never ever go to Bloodstock in my life because they shunned me for so long. But I went last year, and I thought to myself, why the fuck did I not go to this festival before? Because it's probably the best festival I've ever been to, and it was. I met so many fucking people that I hadn't seen for so fucking long, and I even mended my bridges with a certain promoter of Bloodstock, and so things could be looking good for next year. Hopefully, we'll see.
Depends on how many bands from this year get carried forward, I guess.
That's the problem.
Although there's an extra day, so that frees up a nice couple of extra slots, doesn't it?
Possibly, yeah. As long as we're not on at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, playing to two people putting their tent up. Yeah.
Yeah, and like they're all putting their tent up at 2:30 in the afternoon, and we're out gigging. Jesus, that would be fun.
So over the years, you've toured with some pretty big names. Anyone going forward, anyone you fancy touring with going forward? Is there any bands that you'd think, this generation, maybe some of the younger bands some of the newer big bands? Is there anyone you'd really like to go out with?
Go out with I never knew you cared. Exodus, definitely. I'd love to go out and tour with Exodus. Really would. It would be an honour for me to tour with Exodus. The newer bands. I kind of like I like Havoc. I think Havoc are pretty good. It would be good to tour with those guys, and they seem like a lot of fun. Municipal Waste, yes, that's a definite. One of the newer bands I really 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 like is Municipal Waste. I think they're fantastic. I think they're really really good. They've got a hardcore edge to them. They've got an old school vibe to them. They've got a new school vibe to them as well. But they keep it really thrash.
Yeah.
And I would probably love to tour with DRI again. I mean, just fucking great touring with them. And I was just thinking the other day, if the Cro-Mags were as good as they were back then I would definitely go out with the Cro-Mags. But it would have to be with Dougie Holland. And I'd have to decline Harley's War because he's another dickhead who's in love with Henry Heston. I think I've pissed about half the hardcore crew off.
Oh, that's it. That's all right. No one listens to this anyway. It's all good.
Yeah.
Right. I got a couple of questions from a couple of the followers. Tom Kenyon asks, "What did you enjoy most about recording the new album?" Finishing it. That's the.
Yeah. The product. Yeah, probably the final product after hearing, because we were in and out. We were in and out. I was there every single time somebody was doing a part. I had to be. So I think probably just the production side of it. Just like hearing all the bits getting stuck together, and having it all to come together as one thing. whereas like we were in doing our parts, and I was in most of the time because I was doing all the guitar parts and doing all the vocals, doing all the solos, and I suppose it was fulfilling hearing all of that come together as one, and hearing the finished product right before it actually went out to America to be mixed. So I suppose, I knew what it was going to be like, and I knew that I'd made something pretty decent.
Is that more involvement you'd had previously? Was that the first time
you kind
of pulled all that bit together?
Hell of a lot more. We did. I suppose when we did Raped by Mutants and we did New Strain EPs, I did a lot of say in that as well. But more so this one, because I kind of engineered it along with the producer, whereas the producers of those other ones, they did it themselves. I was actually there at every part of the production procedure. So I kind of like said what I had more hands-on approach than, say, previous EPs. Okay.
Right, next question from Tyler from Blacklist. He goes, when are the new patches coming?
They're coming.
He's always moaning, isn't he? Fucking kids of today.
The patches will be along when the T-shirts are along. And what we will do is we will release a patch and a T-shirt and a CD combination when the album is released. So when it comes, everything will be released when the album becomes physical, and it will be out in vinyl as well.
Final one was actually more of a hello than a question. Came from Dan Ranger off of Hydrovane. Dan says,
"Oh, Danny boy."
Dan says hello, and he looks back with kind of fond memories of those times you guys used to jam together when you were down in London. So,
Oh yeah. It was like that was fantastic with Dan Ranger and Brad Sims from the drummer of Deathwish. That was my kind. I suppose that was my kind of introduction into the thrash world. Those guys helped me along nicely into the thrash world. Big up to Dan Ranger, friends for life, thrash for life.
Finally, anything else you want to get off your chest? Shout outs, plugs, anything else that we haven't covered?
I just want to say an absolutely humongous thanks to Carlo Redegas from Carcass, ex-Carcass, for doing the neoclassical solo at the start of Evilution Apocalypse. If it wasn't for him, that intro wouldn't be what it was. I mean, he very kindly, it was just his bag, just his cup of tea, because he absolutely loves the neoclassical stuff, and he is a master, an absolute master guitar player. And I really thank him for that, because it just, that song wouldn't be that without him. He made an incredible job. I'd like to say, obviously, I'd like to say thanks to Mark Harris at DM Studios in Dundee for, spending so much time with us, going through all the shit with us, just probably just putting up with all my shit, because I was cantankerous old bastard with him, really. And but we did have a good time. We did have a good laugh, and I'm sure he enjoyed making the album as much as I made the album. I'd just like to say a big shout out to Evil Blood from my area up here. Really good friends of mine. We will do gigs together, guys. Don't worry. I'd like to say a big shout out to Coexist as well, who are from up this area in Glasgow. Big shout out to Charlie and QZ from Coexist. And if you haven't seen Coexist, they're a grind band you guys must see. They're fucking mentally, brutally fucking hard. I'd like to say a big shout out to Crusher Jewel, my old mucker. Rock hard, rock heavy, rock animal. And I'd just like to say a big happy birthday to my brother sitting here, my brother Kenny Finlay. And There you go. And a big FOED to Henry Heston.
And how else could Coke finish an interview? New virus, Evolution Apocalypse, is out today on Combat Records and is a reassuring punch in the face to British thrash from a band that now knows how to upset the apple cart. Coke, thanks for joining us. We hope it's a massive success. We know it's going to be because it's fucking awesome. Look after yourself and see you on the road soon. Thanks, mate.
Thanks very much. Thanks a lot for having me, Neil. Cheers, mate.
Cheers,
all the best.
And next up is a band that is meant to be supporting Virus in their London show. This is Bangover, and this is Shovel Butcher. Next up is another band who will be supporting Virus on their launch shows. This is Blackball's Blacklist, and this is Bad Attitude.
I have a perpetual need. I never find a fade. To give a fuck if I'm drunk or stoned. I'm unkillable in the body zone. I'm a chemically altered freak. Shooting toxins every day of the week. They tell me to get professional help. Doesn't matter cause I do this to myself. Can't stop me if I don't wanna. I leave this world as a front runner. Not gonna stop till I'm headed south. I'm a sarcastic son of a bitch. Playing thrash don't make you rich. Don't give a fuck what you wanna claim. Let's drink and smoke till we kill our brains. I rule the pit and you just can't take me. I'm thrash to death and who can blame me? Spinning my head and breaking my neck. I'm soaked in booze and I'm fucking wrecked. Can't stop me if I don't wanna. I leave this world as a front runner. Beer in my hand and a joint in my mouth. Not gonna stop till I'm headed south.
And that's the end of this week's show. Thank you for joining us. Next week we've got Aaron from Shrapnel. In the meantime, please follow all our social media streams at UK Thrashers, and of course subscribe in your podcast feed. See you next week. And this is the 2020 UK Thrashers production. Thank you to all the bands that let us use their music. We couldn't do it without you. Cheers, guys.